Good evening, dear listener. Tonight we travel back to a winter evening in 1970, the day before Christmas Eve, as a quiet Michigan snowfall begins to thicken across the forest roads. A small family drives toward a mansion they barely know, a mansion wrapped in tradition, secrets, and a gathering that was planned by a man who is no longer alive. Snow fell in soft white waves across the Michigan highway, drifting thick against the windshield of the yellow station wagon. The world outside had become a blur of pale flakes and tall black trees standing like silent watchmen on either side of the road. Wind howled through the forest, carrying with it a cold so deep it felt alive. Benjamin Monroe tightened his grip on the steering wheel, knuckles pale beneath leather gloves. He leaned forward slightly, peering through the sweeping arc of the wipers as they struggled to clear the growing frost. The car heater hummed weakly, blowing warm air that fogged the lower corners of the glass. Beside him sat Emily, wrapped in a soft burgundy scarf tucked up to her chin. Her blonde hair brushed the collar of her coat, and her hands rested gently on her lap as she watched the snowfall with calm interest. Every few minutes she reached up to warm her nose with the edge of the scarf. In the back seat, Emma pressed her forehead against the cold window, her breath leaving small round clouds on the glass. She wore a puffy purple coat, thick earmuffs, and knitted mittens she refused to take off. Her small boots kicked lightly with excitement. "So many trees," Emma exclaimed, pointing out at the blur of forest rushing past. "It looks like 1,000 Christmas trees standing in a row." Emily smiled warmly. "It really does. Michigan forests always feel magical this time of year." Benjamin cleared his throat softly. "Magical or not, I would prefer a bit less snow while driving. These roads are slicker than they look." Emma giggled. "Papa, you worry too much. It is only snow." Emily squeezed Benjamin's arm gently, though her voice carried a note of caution. "She is right, but the weather is getting worse. Maybe we should slow down a little." Benjamin nodded and eased his foot off the gas, letting the car glide more gently along the twisting highway. Snow whipped across the front bumper and swirled through the headlights like 1,000 tiny white sparks. Emma turned around in her seat, pulling a small notebook from her coat pocket. "Can I show you my list for Santa?" Benjamin chuckled. "Let us hear it." Emma sat proudly, clearing her throat dramatically. "I want a new ice skating dress, purple like my coat, with sparkles all over it, and a real grown-up paint set, and maybe a little dog, a fluffy one." "A dog?" Emily laughed softly. "We can barely keep Emma fed on time, much less a puppy." Emma crossed her arms with exaggerated seriousness. "I promise I would feed it every day." Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "Every day?" "Yes, every day," she insisted. The soft warmth of family conversation filled the car, a small haven from the cold storm gathering outside. But beneath the warmth, an unease lingered, one Benjamin tried to ignore. The invitation had arrived months ago, handwritten in neat cursive on thick ivory parchment. It had been addressed to them by Emily's late father, Charles Hawthorne, the very last letter he sent before he passed away in the spring. Inside the envelope was a simple message: "One last Christmas at Hawthorne Manor. Bring the whole family. December 23rd. But when they responded, they learned the party would instead be hosted by Rose Charles' widow, a woman none of them really knew. She had married Charles late in his life, long after Emily and Benjamin were grown adults living in Michigan. The family had only met her briefly at the funeral. A quiet, soft-spoken woman with rose-colored lipstick and an expression that was hard to read. Now, months later, she had taken up residence in the Hawthorne family villa and invited all of Charles's children, grandchildren, cousins, and extended relatives to a grand Christmas gathering. Something about it felt strange. Benjamin shifted uncomfortably in his seat, remembering the last time he had spoken with Rose. She had been polite, calm, almost too calm, as if she already knew more about the family than they knew about her. "What are you thinking about?" Emily asked softly, noticing his expression. Benjamin straightened. "Nothing. Just watching the road." Emily studied him for a moment, but she let it go. They both knew what bothered him. They just did not want to say it aloud. Emma, oblivious to the tension, pressed her mittened hands against the window again. "Look," she said. "The snow is thicker now. Everything looks fuzzy. The storm was worsening. The trees became darker silhouettes moving past like shadows. The headlights reflected off flakes so dense they seemed to fall in sheets." Benjamin tightened his grip. "We may need to turn off soon," he murmured. "The villa should be close." Emily leaned forward, scanning the blurry signs on the roadside. "I think the next turn is ours." Benjamin nodded and slowed even more. The tires crunched deeply into snow now, each turn of the wheels sending up small sprays of powder. The cold outside felt sharper somehow, as if the air itself was beginning to freeze. Emma suddenly gasped. "Papa, look!" Benjamin's heart jolted. A dark shape burst from the trees ahead. A deer, large, leaping onto the road. Its hooves struck the pavement hard, snow kicking up around it. Its body gleamed wet in the headlights, muscles rigid, eyes wide with fear. Benjamin reacted before he could think. "Hold on." He slammed his foot onto the brake. The tires skidded. The car lurched. Snow flew in every direction. Emily grabbed the dashboard. Emma screamed, clutching her seatbelt. The deer stood frozen in front of them, breath misting from its nostrils, ears flicked back as if deciding whether to run or charge. The car shuddered violently as it sighed to came to a stop. For a moment, everything was silent. The only sound was Benjamin's harsh breathing and the whisper of wind against the car's exterior. Emily reached over and placed a trembling hand on his arm. "Are you all right?" Benjamin swallowed hard, his pulse racing. "Yes," he said quietly. "Yes. Everyone okay?" Emma nodded shakily. "I think so." Outside, the deer stared at them for one long moment, eyes reflecting like gold coins in the headlights before leaping back into the trees, disappearing into the dark forest without a sound. Benjamin exhaled slowly, hands still gripping the wheel. Emily looked back at Emma. "Sweetheart, are you hurt?" Emma shook her head. "No, just scared." Emily stroked her hair gently. "It is all right now." But it did not feel all right. Not to Benjamin. Something in the air seemed to shift. The forest felt too quiet, the snow too heavy, as if the world around them had paused to watch. Benjamin finally released the brake. "Let us continue," he said softly, carefully. The family sat in tense silence as the car rolled forward again, the yellow headlights cutting a narrow path of orange light through the swirling white. Whatever waited for them at Hawthorne Manor, the cold Michigan night seemed eager to swallow them into it. Benjamin drives slowly now, shaken from the near collision. Emily watches the trees blur by, and young Emma rambles excitedly about Christmas morning as the snow sings against the windows. The tires rolled forward cautiously, crunching deep into the thickening snow as Benjamin guided the yellow station wagon through the storm. The world outside had turned into a swirling white tunnel, trees bending under the heavy snowfall, branches sagging low, shadows shifting behind curtains of ice crystals. Emily rubbed her hands together, seeking warmth. "That was close," she murmured, glancing at Benjamin. "Are you sure you are all right?" Benjamin nodded, though his jaw remained tight. "A bit shaken, but fine. We need to be extra careful now. The roads will only get worse from here." Emma leaned forward between the seats, her little face glowing with curiosity rather than fear. "Papa, did you see its eyes? They were so yellow, like Christmas lights." Emily smiled faintly, touched her daughter's cheek. "Deer often freeze when they see headlights." It must have been scared too. Benjamin inhaled deeply, trying to shake the image from his mind. The deer's rigid stance, the wild fear in its eyes, it lingered in his thoughts, like a warning he could not quite grasp. The car turned onto a narrower stretch of road, the forest closing in on both sides. Pines heavy with snow lined the path like towering frozen guardians. The storm whined through their branches, sending loose flakes tumbling across the hood in sudden gusts. Emma sat back again, swinging her legs as she spoke. "I hope the house has a big Christmas tree. Grandpa always told me the Hawthorne tree was taller than our whole living room." Emily's expression softened at the mention of her father. He loved that house. He always said it felt alive during Christmas. Benjamin kept his eyes on the road. "And now Rose is the one hosting," he said quietly. "Strange, is it not? Your father invited us months before he died, but she is the one putting the event together." Emily hesitated. Yes, a bit strange, but she was his wife. Perhaps she wants to honor his last wishes. Benjamin's fingers tightened slightly on the wheel. Emma, oblivious to the adult tension, continued cheerfully. "I hope we get presents from Rose. Maybe she will give me a puppy, or that purple ice skating dress I want." Emily laughed. "Let us not overwhelm the poor woman. She hardly knows us." "But Grandpa said she owned pretty dresses," Emma insisted. "He said she had good taste." Benjamin exchanged a small glance with Emily. Charles Hawthorne had spoken surprisingly little about Rose, despite marrying her late in his life. When he did speak of her, it was always politely, distantly, as if talking about someone he admired but did not truly understand. The car crept around a bend, its headlights sweeping across a long chain of snow-drenched trees. The storm roared briefly, making the windshield tremble. Benjamin slowed to a near crawl as the road narrowed, bordered by steep snowbanks on both sides. Emily leaned closer to the glass. There should be a small sign somewhere, Hawthorne Lake Road. A faint wooden post emerged from the swirling white ahead, a carved sign half buried under snow, its letters barely visible. Benjamin exhaled with relief. "There," he said. "We turn here." The tires slid slightly as he turned the wheel, but caught traction just enough for them to continue up the long private road. It wound through the woods like a snake, twisting, climbing, disappearing behind tall evergreens. Emma pressed against the window again. "Look, lights!" Benjamin slowed, squinting through the storm. Yes, lights. Small glowing lanterns lined the driveway ahead. Amber, flickering, warm against the sea of white, they cast golden halos across the snowbanks, guiding the car toward the property like a trail of fireflies frozen in place. The station wagon crawled forward, crunching over the long stretch of decorative gravel hidden under layers of snow. The wind settled for a moment, and the massive silhouette of the Hawthorne mansion came into view. Emily gasped softly. It was enormous, a towering three-story villa built of dark stone and red brick, its steep gabled roof heavy with snow. Ornate trim decorated the eaves, and arched windows glowed warmly from inside, casting soft yellow light across the snowy courtyard. Frost clung to the glass in delicate feathery patterns. Icicles hung like crystal daggers from every edge. Beyond the house, a frozen lake stretched quietly beneath the dim moonlight. Its surface reflected faint silver through the trees, creating a haunting, peaceful mirror of the storm-darkened sky. Emma stared in awe. It is like a storybook castle. Benjamin parked the car near the front steps, the engine sputtering before settling into silence. For a moment, the only sounds were the wind brushing against the house and the gentle tinkling of icicles shifting in the cold. Emily unfastened her seatbelt. Well, we made it. Benjamin stepped out first, boots sinking deep into the snow. The cold bit into his face instantly. He walked around the car and lifted their suitcases from the trunk, setting them down beside Emily. Emma hopped out, her purple coat puffed up like a tiny winter berry. She looked up at the towering house with wide, enchanted eyes, muffled by the thick earmuffs covering her ears. "It is so big," she declared. "Do people actually live here?" Benjamin adjusted his mustache, breath fogging in front of him. "Some do, though it might feel less like a house and more like a museum to me." Emily nudged him lightly with her elbow. "Be kind. It is beautiful." Snow wafted down from overhead as they climbed the long stone staircase. The porch stretched wide, decorated with wreaths of evergreen and red berries. A pair of old iron lanterns flickered on either side of the massive front door, an imposing slab of polished wood carved with intricate patterns of vines and cherubs. Emma reached up and ran her mitten across the carved surface. "It feels old," she whispered. "Older than Grandpa." Benjamin smiled faintly. "Many things are older than your grandpa was." Emily lifted the brass knocker shaped like a lioness head. "Well," she said softly, "here we go." She let the knocker fall. The sound echoed through the entire porch and disappeared into the depths of the house. Emma held her breath. Benjamin let his eyes drift along the shadowed windows, wondering if someone was peering back. The storm whined across the lake behind them, rattling frozen branches and pushing snow up the steps in soft, sweeping lines. Then footsteps, slow, measured, coming closer on the other side of the door. Emma squeezed Emily's wrist. Benjamin straightened slightly. The heavy locks clicked 1, 2, 3, and the gigantic wooden door began to open. The front door swung wide with a soft groan, releasing a wave of warm air into the cold night. The scent of pine, burning firewood, and old polished wood drifted out to welcome the Monroe family. Inside, a tall man in a perfectly pressed black suit stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Good evening," he said, with a smooth voice. "Welcome to Hawthorne Manor. I am Darwin, the house butler. Please do come in." Benjamin nodded politely and ushered Emily and Emma inside. They stepped into an expansive foyer lined with dark wooden walls and a rich red carpet that stretched across the polished floor like a river of velvet. A grand chandelier hung from the high ceiling, its many crystals glowing softly from dozens of flickering bulbs, scattering small rainbows across the walls. Emma gasped in delight. Wow! Her voice echoed faintly through the cavernous space. Candles sat in brass holders along the walls, creating a warm glow that danced across portraits of stern-looking ancestors with powdered wigs and sharp cheekbones. Their painted eyes seemed to follow the family as they moved deeper into the home. Darwin reached for the luggage. "Allow me," he said, lifting the suitcases with surprising ease for a man of his age. "Rooms have been prepared upstairs. Dinner will be served soon, but the others are waiting in the drawing room. Please make yourselves comfortable." Emma barely heard him. She had already rushed toward the staircase, her boots tapping lightly on the red carpeted steps. "Emma," Emily called. "Stay where we can see you." Emma turned back, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "But Mama, it is so big. I want to see the upstairs hallway." Emily smiled despite her worry. "All right, one hallway. Do not go into any rooms." Emma nodded and disappeared around the corner of the staircase, her muffled footsteps fading upward. Benjamin exhaled softly. She is going to get lost in this place. Emily linked her arm with his. Let her be a child for a few minutes. It is not often we come somewhere like this. A museum of ghosts, Benjamin muttered. Emily nudged him lightly. Behave. Darwin motioned for them to follow. This way, sir and madam. They stepped into a large drawing room, glowing warmly from a roaring fireplace. Flames crackled behind the iron grate, sending shadows dancing across the tall bookshelves and velvet drapes. A long, polished table held plates of hors d'oeuvres, small pastries, sliced cheeses, spiced nuts, and tiny sandwiches arranged neatly. Near the fire stood Richard and his wife Gloria. Richard was broad-shouldered, with dark hair combed neatly back and a grin that lit up his whole face. He stepped forward at once. "Benjamin, Emily, look at you two. It has been far too long." Benjamin shook his hand with a genuine smile. "Richard, good to see you, cousin." Gloria appeared beside him, holding a small newborn wrapped in a soft pink blanket. "And this," she said proudly, "is little Marie. She will be 3 months old tomorrow." Emily's face softened instantly. "Oh, Gloria, she is beautiful." The infant peeked out with sleepy blue eyes, a tiny yawn escaping her lips. Gloria rocked her gently. Richard laughed. "She cries like a banshee at night, but for now she is an angel." Benjamin stepped closer. "Congratulations, she is lovely." "Thank you," Gloria said, glowing with happiness. Emma's voice suddenly echoed from upstairs. "Mama, Papa, this place is amazing." Her footsteps pattered above them like tiny drumbeats. Richard chuckled. "She sounds excited." Emily sighed. She has never been to a house like this. Richard poured glasses of warm cider for the adults. "None of us have, at least not since, well, you know." Emily lowered her eyes. "Since father passed." Gloria placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. He would be happy to see everyone gathered here again. The flames crackled louder, casting warm orange light across the room. Benjamin stepped toward the fireplace, holding his cup near the warmth. "So far it looks like only the 4 of us arrived?" "Yes," Richard replied. "We came about an hour ago. The storm slowed us too. Darwin told us Rose is preparing something upstairs for later tonight." Emily frowned slightly. Strange that she is not here yet. Benjamin nodded in agreement. Richard offered a tray of small sandwiches. "Have some before the real dinner. These little things are addictive." Emily took one gratefully and bit into it. That is good. I wonder what the kitchen staff has prepared." Gloria sipped her cider. "Darwin said a full Christmas meal is planned for tomorrow evening." Tonight is just light food and greeting." Benjamin lifted an eyebrow. "Speaking of greeting, where is Rose, exactly? Have either of you seen her?" Richard shook his head. "No, she was in her room when we arrived." Emily glanced toward the high ceiling, worry fluttering faintly in her chest. Well, Emma should be careful not to wander too far then. As if summoned by her concern, the wind outside slammed against the window panes with a sudden howl. Snowflakes streaked past the glass, swirling like tiny ghosts caught in the storm. Gloria shivered slightly. "This storm is getting worse. I hope the rest of the family makes it in time." Benjamin nodded, staring into the fire. "It feels like the world is going dark early tonight." A single candle near the bookshelf flickered violently, as if blown by a sudden gust that should not exist indoors. Emily stiffened. "Did you feel that draft?" Richard frowned. "Likely just the chimney drawing strange. These old houses always breathe strangely in storms." Gloria looked around nervously. "Do you think we should check on Emma?" she asked. Before Emily could answer, a sound rang out, a shrill, piercing sound, a sound that cut through the cozy warmth of the room like a knife. A scream, high-pitched, terrified, echoing from upstairs. Emma. Emily's glass fell to the floor and shattered. "Emma!" she cried. Benjamin ran first, sprinting toward the staircase. Emily followed, heart pounding. Richard and Gloria exchanged one horrified glance before rushing after them, Gloria clutching baby Marie close. Emma's scream echoed again, louder this time, filled with fear. Benjamin took the stairs two at a time, boots clacking sharply on the wooden steps. Emily stumbled behind him, nearly tripping on her dress. "Emma!" Benjamin shouted. "Where are you?" Emma's voice trembled from somewhere down the hallway. "In here. Mama, Papa, please help." Benjamin burst through the doorway of the upstairs bathroom and froze. Emily came skidding in a moment later. When she saw the floor, she covered her mouth and gasped. Rose lay crumpled on the cold, tiled floor. Her long pink dress was smeared with dark red stains, the delicate silk soaked through. One hand was sprawled limply beside her, fingers still curled as if trying to grab something. Her other arm was tucked beneath her, twisted unnaturally. Beside her head, a brass candlestick, large, heavy, smeared with blood. Emma stood pressed against the far wall, trembling violently, tears streaking her cheeks. Benjamin rushed to Rose's side, fingers pressing gently against her throat. "No pulse. She is gone," he whispered. "She is gone." Emily wrapped her arms around Emma at once, pulling her into a tight, protective embrace. "Oh, sweetheart. What happened?" Emma sobbed into her mother's shoulder. "I came in to wash my hands, and she was on the floor, and her voice broke." Benjamin stood slowly, his face pale and tight. "This was no fall," he said quietly. "Someone struck her. Someone murdered her." The hallway filled with the sound of running footsteps. Richard appeared first, breathless. "What happened?" We heard his voice cut off sharply when he saw Rose's body. Gloria stepped behind him, gasping as she shielded baby Marie's face from the sight. Before anyone could speak further, footsteps sounded downstairs. Heavy ones. The front door creaked. Voices, laughter, snow boots stomping. Benjamin's older brother Daniel burst into the lobby from the storm, cheeks red, hair dusted with snow. Behind him strode his wife Charlotte, a tall, elegant woman with sharp eyes, followed by their 3 children, Luna at 16 with long jet-black hair, Casper at 11 with an eager grin, and little Mike at 8 who clung to his mother's coat. Daniel smiled widely as he removed his snow-covered gloves. Evening. We made it through the storm after all. Why does everyone look like they have just seen a ghost? Benjamin stared at him from the top of the stairs, the blood-soaked scene behind him, and the family gathered around the doorway in shock. No one answered, because the truth was worse than a ghost. Rose Hawthorne was dead. The house fell silent. The silence after a scream, the silence after death, the silence that seems to listen back. Benjamin remained frozen at the top of the stairs, staring down at Daniel and his family as they shook snow from their coats, blissfully unaware of the horror only 20 feet above their heads. Emily tightened her grip around Emma, who clung to her mother's side like a trembling leaf in a winter storm. It was Richard who broke the spell. With a grim voice, he stepped forward and said quietly, "Daniel, you should come upstairs." Daniel frowned, his smile fading. "What on earth is this tone? We have been driving 3 hours in a storm. Can it not wait?" "No," Benjamin said, voice low and hollow. "It cannot." Daniel exchanged a confused look with his wife. Charlotte's eyebrows rose in surprise, but she nodded and guided her 3 children toward the drawing room. "Stay here," she told them firmly. "All of you. Do not go upstairs." Luna gave a rebellious sigh, but obeyed. Casper and Mike stared nervously at the adults, sensing something was wrong. Daniel started up the stairs. Benjamin stepped aside so he could enter the bathroom. Daniel saw the blood first, then the body, then the candlestick. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to horror. "Dear God," he whispered. "What happened here?" "Emma found her," Emily said, stroking her daughter's hair as Emma sobbed quietly into her scarf. Daniel knelt beside Rose's body, careful not to disturb anything. "She is gone," he murmured, "struck hard, very hard." Benjamin nodded. "We think she was attacked." Behind her head. "Could be someone standing above her while she was kneeling, or someone she trusted enough to turn her back to," Richard added grimly. Benjamin's jaw tightened. The thought had already crossed his mind. Emily looked pale, almost sickly. "Benjamin, what do we do now? We are in the middle of nowhere. This storm is getting worse." A gust of wind howled outside, as if responding to her fear. Snow blasted against the window, rattling the glass like icy fingers tapping to be let in. Darwin the butler appeared at the end of the hallway, breathless. He froze. His eyes widened. "Oh dear heavens!" Benjamin stepped toward him, voice steady. "Darwin, where was Rose tonight? Who saw her last?" Darwin swallowed hard, glancing nervously at the body. Madame Rose retired to her room after preparing some decorations with the kitchen staff. She said she felt tired. "I walked her upstairs myself." "When was this?" Benjamin asked. "Perhaps 1 hour ago." Richard turned sharply. 1 hour. Then she was killed not long after. Darwin closed his eyes, gripping the hallway railing. I should have stayed with her. I should have." Benjamin raised a hand. "Blame will not help us now." Darwin nodded stiffly. Emily whispered, "Benjamin, we should call the police." Benjamin inhaled slowly. "Yes, but we are deep in the northern forest. Power lines may be frozen. The storm may block the roads. I need to check the phone room." He turned to Richard. "Stay with Emma and Emily. Do not let anyone wander." Richard nodded and placed a protective hand on Emily's shoulder. Daniel stood, his face pale. "Do we tell the others downstairs?" "No," Benjamin said. "Not until we know more." Daniel clenched his jaw. I will guard the stairs. Benjamin left the bathroom and walked down the hallway with fast, deliberate steps. His boots echoed softly against the old wooden floorboards. Emily whispered to Emma, "You are safe now, sweetheart. I promise." Emma sniffled, eyes red, clutching her mother's hand. Benjamin reached the small telephone room near the end of the hall. He picked up the receiver. Dead. Only silence. He flicked the switch. Nothing. "Lines are down," he muttered. Another gust of wind slammed against the side of the house, shaking the walls. Darwin, who had followed him cautiously, spoke in a hushed voice. "The storm. It must have damaged the wires." Benjamin nodded grimly. "So we are trapped here." Darwin swallowed. "Yes, sir." And then the lights flickered. Once, twice. The chandelier in the foyer chimed softly as the bulbs dimmed. Emily gasped. Emma whimpered. Gloria held baby Marie tighter. Richard looked up sharply. "Do not tell me the power." The lights steadied again, but the warning was clear as day. Benjamin walked back toward the others, meeting Daniel at the top of the stairs. "We need to gather everyone in the main hall," Benjamin said. "No one leaves each other's sight. No one goes off alone." Daniel nodded. "What do we tell them?" he whispered. Benjamin looked over his shoulder at the bathroom, at the blood, at the candlestick, at the body of Rose Hawthorne. "We tell them the truth," he said quietly. "Someone in this house is a murderer." The mansion seemed to inhale after Benjamin spoke the words. "Someone in this house is a murderer." For several long, brittle moments, no one moved. The wind howled across the frozen lake outside, rattling old window frames. Baby Marie let out a small whimper that echoed like a warning into the silence. Benjamin cleared his throat, steadying his voice. "We need to stay together, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we get some help here." Daniel nodded grimly. "So let's split up into 3 groups?" "Yes," Benjamin replied. "Daniel, you and I will try to find if some old telephone line could still be active in this old house. There used to be one in the back office, and possibly another running outside toward the gardening shed." Richard folded his arms, eyes narrowed. "I will gather the staff. Louise, the cleaning lady, Mark, the chef, and Darwin, the butler. They may have seen or heard something." Emily held Emma close, then looked up at Benjamin. "And what about us? You, Gloria, and the older kids will gather candles," Benjamin said. The power already flickered. "We need light if the storm knocks out electricity. The basement might have crates from last winter." Emily nodded. She seemed pale but determined. Caspar straightened proudly. "I can carry candles." Luna rolled her eyes, but her voice was steady. "We will help." Benjamin inhaled deeply. "No one goes anywhere alone. Groups stay close. And if you see anything at all, you call for help. Louder than you think you need to." The groups formed quickly. Daniel lit a lantern. Emily took Emma's hand, with Gloria behind her holding Marie. Richard tightened his jaw, preparing himself. The group started to walk. Group 1. Benjamin, Daniel. They walked down the long hallway, lantern swaying slightly in Benjamin's hand. The wallpaper here was older, faded green, with gold leaf patterns curling along the edges. The wooden floors creaked beneath their footsteps, carrying their sound into the dark. "Are you thinking what I am thinking?" Daniel asked quietly. "That Rose was murdered for something specific?" Benjamin replied. "Yes." "And the testament?" Daniel whispered. "Father never mentioned one." Benjamin's brows furrowed. Neither did Emily. They reached the back of the house where the old office used to be. The doorknob was cold, the metal biting into Benjamin's glove as he turned it. Inside, the room smelled of dust and old paper. A typewriter sat on a desk, half covered by a sheet. Boxes were stacked in the corner, and the wallpaper peeled in thin strips. "Look for any old phone outlets," Benjamin said. Daniel lifted a fallen shelf, shaking off dust. "No lines here." Benjamin checked the opposite wall and froze. Wet footprints, large boots, fresh, leading from the back door across the wooden floor directly toward the kitchen. Daniel knelt down. Someone has been outside recently. But in this storm, why would anyone go out? Benjamin followed the footprints with his lantern. The snow melting off the floorboards formed small reflective puddles. The tracks stopped at the swinging door leading into the kitchen. "Someone entered from outside," Benjamin murmured, and walked straight into the kitchen. Daniel swallowed. "Do we follow them?" "Not yet," Benjamin said. "We will regroup first. Group 2. Emily, Gloria, Luna, Casper, Mike, Emma." The basement door was heavy, old wood with iron hinges. Emily opened it slowly, revealing a set of stone steps descending into darkness. A draft of cold, damp basement air washed over them. Casper gagged slightly. "It smells like old potatoes." Luna rolled her eyes. "It is a basement, genius." Emily lit one of the small hallway candles and held it out to illuminate the steps. "Stay behind me," she instructed. They descended carefully. Their footsteps echoed in hollow thuds. Shadows moved across jars, crates, and shelves stacked with old winter supplies. Gloria shifted Marie gently in her arms. "Do you see any candles?" Emma pointed excitedly. "There. Crates." They approached a stack of old wooden boxes labeled "Holiday Lights, Candles, Decor." Emily crouched and opened one. Candles. Dozens of thick white Christmas candles wrapped in paper. She exhaled in relief. "Perfect. Everyone take a handful." Casper started filling his coat pockets. Luna took several. Even Mike tried to carry 2 before nearly dropping them. Emma, wandering only 2 steps away, stopped suddenly. Mama Emily looked over. "What is it, sweetheart?" Emma stared at something on the ground, something wedged between a stack of dusty crates near the far wall. Emily walked over and picked it up carefully. It was a torn document. A page ripped violently down the middle, ink smeared, edges jagged. It smelled faintly of old perfume. At the top of the page, in elegant handwriting, "Last Will and Testament of Charles Hawthorne." Emily's blood ran cold. "Gloria," she whispered, "look at this." Gloria's eyes widened. Why would this be down here, torn apart like that? The children stared, confused. Emma tugged Emily's sleeve. "Is that Grandpa's writing?" Emily swallowed hard. "Yes, sweetheart." The document had been ripped horizontally, as if someone wanted a particular paragraph destroyed, but pieces remained. Words blurred from tearing, leaving the estate to not to be informed until Rose Hawthorne shall, then the rest was torn beyond recognition. Gloria whispered, "That cannot be a coincidence." "No," Emily murmured, "it is not." She folded the torn testament and tucked it into her coat. "We should go back upstairs." Group 3, Richard, Louise, and Chef Mark Richard walked briskly through the east hallway, Louise, the cleaning lady, hurrying behind him. She was small and frail with curly white hair, wearing an old green sweater that hung loosely around her thin frame. Chef Mark followed 2 round, red-cheeked, breathing heavily as he wiped his hands on his apron. "Do you know where Darwin is?" Richard asked. "They have walked through most of the house now and was on their way back to the living room." Louise shook her head. He said he was going to check Madame Rose's body again, sir. Something about collecting the murder weapon. Mark flinched. I do not like any of this. Something evil is in this house, Richard sighed. They walked into the great hall, the massive room decorated for Christmas, filled with garlands, and a towering tree adorned with golden ribbons and delicate glass ornaments. The fireplace crackled gently. Everything seemed calm. Then Louise gasped. Her knees buckled. She dropped her feather duster. Richard's eyes widened. Good heavens, Mark stepped back in horror. Under the Christmas tree, among the wrapped presents, lay Darwin, the butler, face pale, eyes wide open. A chef knife plunged deep into his chest, handle sticking upward. His gloved hand rested on a wrapped present, as if he had fallen forward while placing it. Blood soaked into the tree skirt, spreading slowly like ink across fabric. Richard whispered, "He never made it back upstairs." Mark trembled violently. "Lord help us, there is a killer in the house." Louise sobbed quietly, covering her mouth. Richard straightened, voice full of dread. "We must warn the others." All three groups returned to the living room at once. Emily clutched the testament. Benjamin followed the wet footprints to the room. Richard arrived pale and shaking. And then Emma screamed. Because Darwin lay there, motionless in the warm glow of Christmas lights. Charlotte gasped. Luna covered her mouth. Caspar clung to Emily's coat. Mike began to cry. Emily whispered, "No, no, Darwin, too." Benjamin knelt beside the body. "Stabbed not long ago. He has not been dead for more than 15 minutes. Daniel asked, voice trembling. "And the knife?" Mark whispered. "It is one from my kitchen." Benjamin stood abruptly. A cold silence spread through the room. The storm outside screamed like an animal. And in that moment, as the Christmas tree lights flickered above Darwin's still body, Benjamin said, "It is clear now. The killer is not outside." He looked at each face in the room. "One of us is lying. One of us, the murderer." The Christmas tree glowed warmly behind him, and beneath it, another body lay dead on Christmas Eve. The snowstorm howled against the window panes as the adults gathered in the living room, their faces pale in the flickering glow of the Christmas tree. The air felt cold despite the crackling fire, and Emma clung to Emily's side, her eyes fixed on the place where Darwin's body had been only minutes ago. Richard took a long breath, trying to steady himself. "We need to talk," he said. "Now. About what we found. About who was where, and why." Louise looked terrified, and with tears in her eyes. Daniel placed a protective hand on Charlotte's shoulder, who was almost in a panic. Gloria rocked Marie softly, trying to shield her from the tension in the room while also trying to calm herself. But as the questions began to rise, who saw Rose last? Who was missing when Darwin died? And when did he leave the last group? Who found the testament? Benjamin suddenly raised a hand. "Not here," he said. "Not with the children listening. They have seen more than enough horror tonight." Emily nodded, stroking Emma's hair gently. "They need safety," she whispered. "Food, warmth, normalcy, even if just for an hour." Daniel took a heavy breath. "Yes, we eat. We put the children to bed. Then we talk." They moved into the dining room, leaving the dark living room behind. Candles glowed across the long wooden table, reflecting warmly off polished silverware. A feast awaited them, prepared earlier by Mark, unaware that the evening would twist into tragedy. Roast turkey carved into perfect slices, mashed potatoes glazed with butter, warm bread rolls steaming from the basket, green beans, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and a small ham glistening with honey glaze, the kind of holiday feast that could make a person forget for a moment that murder lurked beneath the tree. The adults forced smiles. The children ate quietly, subdued but comforted by the meal. Emma sat between her cousins, her purple coat draped over the back of her chair like a soft reminder of normal days. Richard leaned toward Mark quietly. "Help me with Darwin," he whispered. Mark hesitated, then nodded. Richard excused himself from the table and went together with Mark to the horrifying scene under the Christmas tree. Together, they pulled Darwin's body from beneath the Christmas tree, careful, respectfully. They carried him toward the service hallway, behind kitchen doors, far out of sight for anyone. The children would not have to remember that horrifying image on a night meant for joy. After a moment of silence for Darwin, Mark returned to the kitchen, where he worked mechanically, washing dishes, wiping counters, anything to keep his hands busy and his mind away from fear. Louise cleaned the dining room, moving slowly but with purpose, her thin arms shaking each time a window rattled from the storm. Still with tears in her eyes, she tried to keep a smile like she always has had. At the table, an actual calmer feeling was settling. Emma tried to cut into a potato that was half the size of her plate. It slipped and fell on the floor. Mike laughed as the potato hit the floor. Emma climbed down under the table to fetch the escaping potato, and while under the table, she pinched her mother's leg and laughed as she thought it was Benjamin sitting beside her. After returning to her place, Richard was in full conversation about what beer brand is the best with Gloria. After the last plate had been cleaned from Mark's exquisite vanilla mouse with saffron biscuits, Benjamin rose at the end of the table to say that it is bedtime for the children, as the grown-ups nodded. Snow continued falling outside, wind sweeping across the lake like a hollow whistle. Upstairs, Emily gathered the children in a warm bedroom, lit by small lamps and a garland of twinkling lights hung above the window. Emma curled beneath thick quilts, Luna reading a book beside her, Casper and Mike tucked into twin beds. The mothers kissed them good night. "We will be in the room next door," Emily whispered. "And the doors will be locked," Charlotte added softly, giving each child a reassuring look. Emma reached out for her mother's hand once more. "Mama, will everything be okay?" Emily stroked her daughter's hair gently. "Yes, sweetheart. You are safe here. We will be right beside you." She closed the door behind them, making sure it locked with a firm click. Across the hall, Gloria stepped quietly into her room with baby Marie in her arms. "Good night," Emily whispered. Gloria nodded, tired eyes softening. She closed her door. Now only the adults remained. The smell of cigars and old leather filled the smoke saloon, one of the oldest rooms in the house. A large mahogany table sat in the center, surrounded by deep green armchairs. Framed photographs of early Hawthorne ancestors lined the walls. A tall grandfather clock ticked in the corner. Benjamin, Richard, Daniel, Charlotte, and Emily sank into the chairs, exhaustion pulling at their faces. Mark clattered dishes somewhere far off in the kitchen. Louise hummed nervously as she swept the dining room. Benjamin poured whiskey into crystal glasses. The amber liquid shimmered in the firelight. "Let us talk," he said, voice steady. Emily cleared her throat and pulled the torn document from her coat. "I found this in the basement," she said quietly. They leaned in. The last will and testament of Charles Hawthorne, Richard read aloud, then torn right in the middle. Charlotte frowned. But why in the basement? Daniel tapped the paper with his finger. And why torn? Was Rose hiding it, or someone else? Benjamin sat back in his chair. Father always told Emily and me the estate was already settled, but he never spoke of changing his will. And he died at 68, healthy, until suddenly he was not. Charlotte whispered. You think his death was not natural? Richard looked up slowly. You think someone killed him? A cold silence filled the room. The grandfather clock ticked. Tick, tick, tick. Emily stared at the paper. I do not want to believe it. But Rose died tonight. Then Darwin. And now this. Daniel rubbed his chin. We cannot rule anything out. Motives may be tied to the inheritance, money, ownership of the house, maybe even secrets, Charlotte asked. Could the testament reveal Rose was cut out of the will? Or perhaps someone else was? Benjamin exhaled. I do not know. The storm outside slammed against the windows. Everyone flinched. After another drink, they stood. It is late, Emily whispered. We should sleep. We will think clearer in the morning. Richard nodded. Agreed. No one leaves their rooms. Lock the doors. We regroup at sunrise. Mark finished in the kitchen and retired to the small servant room. Louise extinguished candles and made her way to her quarters. One by one, the adults began drifting down the halls, Benjamin and Emily to their room, Richard to his guest room, Daniel and Charlotte to theirs. But as the lights dimmed in the hall and footsteps faded and the storm pressed colder against the windows, something else stirred within Hawthorne Manor. A door creaked softly. A shadow passed over carpet. A figure moved silently in the night. And before the sun rose before the first glimpse of Christmas morning, one of the adults who went to sleep tonight would never wake again. Merry Christmas, dear listener. Tonight the snow drapes softly over Hawthorne Manor. The storm has calmed, and dawn creeps through the frosted windows with a pale winter glow. Christmas morning has come, but joy cannot hide the shadow that still clings to the old house, a shadow that has claimed another life. The first sound Emma heard was the faint crackle of the fireplace downstairs. She blinked awake, curled between her cousins under a pile of blankets. The room was warm, lit by the early orange glow of sunrise filtering through frosted windows. For a moment, she forgot everything. The scream, the body on the bathroom floor, the fear in her parents' voices. For a moment, she felt like a child on Christmas morning. Her heart fluttered. Presents, lights, warm cocoa. Even though she knew terrible things had happened last night, she could not stay in bed any longer. She wriggled carefully, trying not to wake Luna, who muttered something sleepy and rolled over. Casper snored softly beside her. Mike had curled like a tiny ball, hugging his pillow. Emma held her breath as she tiptoed across the carpet, her pink morning robe trailing behind her. She reached the door, turned the knob slowly, and slipped out into the hall. The house was quiet, a big, old, creaking quiet. She padded down the long staircase, the scent of cinnamon and wood smoke welcoming her like a warm hug. As she stepped onto the bottom landing, she saw a shape moving in the kitchen. Mark. The chef stood mixing batter, his apron dusted with flour. He turned at the sound of her steps and smiled softly. Well, good morning, little miss, he said warmly. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Emma said with a grin. Are you baking cookies already? Of course, he replied, his voice gentle despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "Christmas waits for no one, not even storms." She giggled and walked past him toward the living room. The Christmas tree glowed beautifully, golden lights twinkling, ribbons shimmering, the ornaments casting soft glimmers on the walls. There was no trace of the horror from last night. No blood, no darkness, just warm holiday magic. Emma knelt and searched for her present, her little hands brushing the carefully wrapped boxes. A soft rustle behind her. Louise, the cleaning lady, stepped inside, carrying a bundle of firewood. "Oh," Louise said with surprise. "You are up early, dear. Almost gave me a fright." Emma giggled. "It is Christmas. I wanted to see the tree." Louise's wrinkled face softened into a warm smile. "Well, I suppose that is a very good reason." She knelt by the fireplace and began stacking the logs. Soon the flame grew brighter, warming the entire room. Emma sat by the tree, hugging her knees. Caspar shuffled in moments later, rubbing his eyes. "Hey," he mumbled, "you beat me to the cookies." Emma grinned. Mark said, "We get gingerbread." Mark entered, holding a small tray of fresh cookies, steam rising from them. The two children's eyes widened with joy. "Go on," he said, "before your parents wake up and scold me for spoiling your breakfast." Emma and Caspar took their cookies, warm and soft, biting into them with delight. For a moment, everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. One by one, adults drifted into the living room, wearing warm robes and tired but gentle expressions. Emily hugged Emma tightly. Benjamin patted Caspar's head. Charlotte rubbed her eyes. Daniel took a seat near the fire. Luna joined with a sleepy groan. Mike toddled in, still half asleep. Breakfast was not ready yet, but everyone sat together on the couches, talking softly. Everyone except Richard. Emily frowned, glancing toward the stairs. "He must have slept heavy," she said. Gloria handed baby Marie to Emily. "I will go wake him," she said gently. "He always sleeps too long after whiskey." She smiled briefly, but her smile faded as she reached the staircase. Everyone waited. A few minutes passed. Then the sound of footsteps, then silence, then a thud. Gloria reappeared at the top of the stairs, but she did not descend. Her face was white as snow. Her breath trembled in her chest. Her eyes widened in horror. "Gloria," Daniel called. "What is it?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Then, barely a whisper, He is dead." Her knees buckled beneath her. She gripped the railing for balance before collapsing onto the top stair, sobbing uncontrollably. Benjamin and Daniel sprinted up the stairs. Emily pulled Emma close, heart racing. Caspar hid behind Charlotte. Luna covered her mouth in shock. Mike began to cry quietly. Another body on Christmas morning. Benjamin pushed open the door to Richard's room. A cold chill rolled across his skin. Richard lay in the bed exactly as though he had fallen asleep peacefully. Blanket pulled to his chest, hair tousled, one arm resting on the pillow. But his face. It was pale, still, eyes closed like velvet curtains drawn tightly shut. Daniel bent forward, placing 2 fingers against his cousin's neck. Nothing. No pulse. Benjamin noticed the glass on the nightstand. A half-empty tumbler. Amber liquid glistened at the bottom. Daniel lifted it and sniffed. His expression soured instantly. "Konjac," he said. Then more darkly, "Bad konjac." Benjamin's stomach dropped. "You mean poisoned," Daniel whispered. "Richard was poisoned last night." Benjamin clenched his fists. First Rose, then Darwin. Now Richard. 3 deaths in one night. Benjamin's grief twisted into anger. "We need answers," he murmured. They went downstairs again. Everyone sat silently at the breakfast table, now eggs and fresh porridge steaming on plates, but no one touched a bite. Emily clutched baby Marie in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Gloria was too distraught to speak. Daniel stood at the head of the table. "Children," he said softly, "please go sit in the living room for a moment. We need to talk to the grown-ups." Emma, Casper, and Luna hesitated. "Go," Charlotte whispered, her voice soft but firm. The children obeyed, heads bowed, shuffling out of the room. Benjamin turned to the adults. "We need to go over last night. Who left their room? Who was awake? Who heard something?" Gloria wiped her eyes, voice trembling. "Richard. He took baby Marie downstairs around midnight. She was crying. He said he would bring her water. She sniffed hard. The last thing I remember was when he came back. His breath smelled of something strong. I fell asleep after that." Daniel nodded grimly. "Benjamin and Emily?" he asked. Emily spoke. "We slept the whole night. I was so tired. Neither of us left the room." Benjamin nodded. "So did we," Daniel added. But Charlotte straightened. "I did not sleep," she said. "Not for hours. The storm was loud. I heard voices downstairs." "Voices?" Benjamin asked. She nodded again. "A man and a woman. They were arguing quietly." In the kitchen, Daniel asked for Mark and Louise, that both came walking into the dining room. "Another murder was committed tonight. Were either of you awake at the time of midnight?" Mark froze, and Louise's broom shook in her hand. Both looked terrified, but both shook their heads in denial. Benjamin sat back in his chair and told everyone, "I would not want to do this, but I believe we have no choice. We may need to speak to the children." Emily gasped. "No, Benjamin. They are just—" "Someone," Benjamin said firmly, "was awake last night. Someone passed Richard's room. Someone heard something. Someone saw something." Silence. Charlotte placed a trembling hand on her husband's. "If the children know anything, they might save the next life." Benjamin nodded. "We questioned them gently, carefully." He looked over at the closed living room doors. The children waited inside. And one of them may hold the truth. One of them may have seen the murderer. The storm beat hard against the window, and somewhere in Hawthorne Manor, a killer listened to every word. Benjamin knelt in front of the children in the warm glow of the living room. Emma, Casper, Luna, and Mike sat huddled together on the velvet sofa, their small faces pale, frightened, and confused. He spoke softly, reassuringly. "You are safe, but something happened last night, and we need your help to understand it. Only if you want to. Nothing you say is wrong. We just need to know who you saw or heard." Emma fiddled with her robe tie. "I heard someone walking down the hallway. Slow footsteps. I thought it was Mama, but the steps were much heavier." "Did you see anyone?" Benjamin asked. "No, but I heard a door close downstairs. The kitchen door." Casper raised his hand next, restless. "I woke up too," he said. "I saw someone walking across the hallway, a small person and a taller man. The smaller person was carrying something." Luna leaned forward. "And I heard voices," she added. "A man and a woman arguing in the kitchen. I could not hear what they said, but the woman's voice was crackly, old." Benjamin exchanged a look with Daniel. "Old." Louise's voice was old, crackly, shaky. Mike spoke last. "I heard someone crying," he said, "downstairs, before I fell back asleep." Benjamin nodded slowly. He stood, thanked the children, and rejoined the adults in the dining room. Daniel whispered, It all points to Louise. Emily swallowed. But she is so gentle, so fragile. Benjamin shook his head. Gentle people break too. Gloria suddenly gasped. I remember something. Her voice shook. When Richard went to find Darwin, he told me Darwin was not where he was supposed to be. Darwin was supposed to bring him the murder weapon, but he was not there. Benjamin's face tightened. Of course, he whispered. There must have been prints on the weapon used to kill Rose. Darwin wanted to retrieve it for evidence. Daniel sucked in a breath. And someone killed him before he could. Benjamin turned to Emily. Check the bathroom. If Darwin died before he got to the candlestick, it should still be there. Emily nodded and hurried upstairs. Benjamin asked Gloria, where did Mark and Richard place Darwin's body? Gloria led them toward the small service hall behind the kitchen. A faint metallic scent hung in the air. She pointed to a spot near the back pantry. He was right here. But when they looked, Richard's eyes widened. Daniel's breath caught. The knife that had killed Darwin was gone. Emily returned down the stairs, pale and shaken. The candlestick, she whispered. The one used to kill Rose, it is gone too. A heavy silence fell. Someone was cleaning up the evidence, erasing the trail, piece by piece. Then Emma's voice suddenly rang out from the kitchen window. Papa, where is Mark going? Why does he have a big brown sack? Benjamin spun toward the window. Mark was trudging through the snow toward the frozen lake, dragging a heavy burlap sack over one shoulder. Daniel rushed to the window beside him. That is no food waste, he whispered. That sack is too heavy. Benjamin turned sharply, just in time to hear a voice behind them. Do not move. Everyone froze. Louise stood in the doorway of the kitchen. Her frail old hands trembled, but the gun she held did not. Turn around, she said, her voice steady despite her age. Hands where I can see them. The grown-ups slowly raised their hands. Louise took one step closer. That is right, she whispered. No sudden movements. Her presence felt heavier than the storm outside, and in her eyes a truth darker than any Christmas night. Benjamin stared at Louise, stunned. Daniel's jaw clenched in disbelief. Emily held tightly to baby Marie. Charlotte covered her mouth. Gloria trembled violently, tears streaking her cheeks. Daniel shook his head slowly. Louise, why? He whispered. You have known our family for years. You have always been kind, loving, trusted. Louise lowered her gaze. I still love this family, she said. But everything went wrong. Snow howled against the windows as she began. It started earlier this year, she said, her hands shaking slightly around the pistol. When your grandfather married Rose, Emily whispered. You never liked her. No, Louise said, because she never loved him. Not truly. She cared for his wealth, his estate, the secrets hidden in his papers. Benjamin frowned. Secrets? Louise nodded. Rose asked questions. Too many. About his old work, about his files, about where he kept his private documents, even though he had retired a decade ago. Charlotte gasped softly. You saw something. Louise nodded. One evening your grandfather collapsed. No warning. Perfectly healthy the day before, and Rose was there. Too close, too calm. Emily covered her mouth. You think she killed him? Louise's voice trembled. I know she did. She was searching for his will, desperate. When she found it, she saw that he left the estate to his children and to us Darwin, Mark, and myself. For our loyalty, for all the years we gave him, Benjamin whispered. The torn testament. Louise nodded. She ripped it apart in her anger. Her eyes glistened with tears. I heard her screaming in the basement. I came down. She tried to burn the rest, then tried to flush some down the toilet. Gloria gasped. That explains the ripped pieces Emily found. Louise continued. She attacked me when I confronted her. We struggled. She swung the brass candlestick. I reacted. I pushed her. She fell. Hard. Emma whimpered softly in the other room. Emily held her tighter. You killed her, Daniel whispered. Louise nodded painfully. Yes, I killed her. But it was in fear, in confusion. I never meant. Her voice cracked. And then I heard your cars pulling into the driveway. Benjamin S. Hart sank. You panicked. Yes, Louise whispered. I panicked. She swallowed. I ran downstairs, out the window, and entered through the back door. That is why you found wet footprints. Then she gestured toward the frozen lake outside. Mark was there. I told him everything. He wanted to protect me. Daniel whispered in horror. Mark killed Darwin. Mark now stood silently in the doorway, snow still in his hair, his apron soaked from dragging the sack toward the lake. He spoke quietly. I am sorry. Darwin said he wanted to take the candlestick to the police. Louise was shaking, terrified. I acted without thinking. And Richard, Gloria cried, collapsing into Benjamin's arms. What about my husband? Louise closed her eyes. Richard saw Mark wiping fingerprints from the knife. He confronted me in the night and told him he thought Mark was the murderer. So I poisoned his drink and helped him with Marie back to his room. Gloria screamed into her hands. Emily cried softly. Daniel stared, pale and disbelieving. Benjamin looked at Mark. What did you throw into the lake? He demanded. Mark glanced at the windows, then back at him. The candlestick and the kitchen knife. The weapons rested now beneath the ice, the final attempt to erase every trace. The room filled with suffocating silence. Louise lowered her gun slightly. You all need to stay here, she whispered shakily. Mark and we are leaving. We will go far away. Benjamin shook his head slowly. You cannot run from this. Louise's eyes glistened. We already have. Mark stepped beside her. Together, they turned toward the back door. The grown-ups stood frozen, hands raised. The storm outside screamed once more, and the killers walked through the shadows of Hawthorne Manor toward the snowy world waiting beyond the door. The grown-ups had shouted. The gun had glinted in Louise's trembling hand. Mark's boots had thudded across the floor as he dragged the heavy brown sack back inside. Emma had been told to stay in the living room. So she did. But fear had made her hide. As the voices grew louder, she crawled under the long wooden table beside the Christmas tree, the same table where gingerbread cookies still sat half-eaten on a plate. A warm glow flickered above her, cast by the sparkling ornaments. From her hiding place, Emma could see directly into the kitchen. She watched the adults with wide, terrified eyes. She watched Louise, her wrinkled hands shaking around the gun, her shoulders trembling from cold and guilt. She watched Mark stand behind her, head bowed, apron stained with snow and secrets. Emma clutched her knees to her chest. She wanted her mother. She wanted Christmas morning. She wanted her father to make everything good again, but most of all, she wanted this nightmare to stop. Louise pointed the gun at Daniel as he stepped forward without fear. You do not have to do this, Daniel said gently. Put the gun down. Let us talk. Louise shook her head violently. No, no talking. I must protect your grandpa's legacy. You are not protecting anything, Charlotte whispered. You are killer. Mark placed a hand on Louise's arm. Louise, enough. We can still walk away. But Benjamin took one step forward. No, he said firmly. You will not run. You will face what you have done. Louise whipped the gun toward him. Benjamin froze. Emma gasped silently beneath the table. Emily cried out, "Please, Louise, do not hurt him." Louise's voice cracked. "I never wanted this. I loved your grandfather. I loved this house. I just wanted to protect his legacy." Everything spiraled the moment Rose betrayed him. "She is dead," Daniel said softly. "Let her go." Mark tugged Louise gently toward the back door. "We have to leave. Now." Emma watched as Louise stepped backward toward the door, finger twitching on the trigger, eyes full of fear. Then Emma saw something no one else noticed. The gun as safety, small, silver, still on. She remembers her father showing her this once when they were out hunting with one of their friends. Louise had never switched it off. Emma's heart pounded. If she could distract them just for 1 second, her father could stop them. She swallowed hard, tears burning in her eyes. Then she did the bravest thing she would ever do. She crawled slowly out from under the table. Her little feet touched the cold wood floor. She stepped into the doorway. "Stop!" Her voice shook the whole room. Everyone froze. Benjamin's heart dropped into his stomach. "Emma, no!" Emily cried. Louise gasped and turned, but the movement was too sudden, too frantic. Her hand slipped. The gun clattered to the floor. Daniel dove forward. Benjamin lunged. Mark stumbled backward in panic. Daniel kicked the gun toward the far wall as Benjamin grabbed Mark's arms and slammed him against the kitchen counter. Mark struggled, but Benjamin held firm. Louise collapsed to her knees, sobbing into her hands. Emma stood trembling in the doorway, her brave shout echoing through the house. Daniel cuffed Mark's wrists with rope from the pantry. Charlotte retrieved the fallen gun. Emily ran to Emma and swept her into her arms, crying with relief. Benjamin stood, breathing heavily, staring at his small daughter, who had saved all of them. Snowflakes floated softly past the windows. The storm finally quieted. Louise whispered brokenly, "I did not mean for it to go this far. I never meant for anyone but Rose to die." But the adults had stopped listening. Later that morning, once the phone lines were partially restored and the snowplow crew reached the main road, the local police arrived. Mark and Louise were escorted out the front door in heavy coats, heads lowered, wrists bound. They did not fight. They were too tired, too guilty, too broken. Benjamin stood on the steps with Emma on his hip. The sheriff nodded. "We will take it from here. You folk stay safe now." Benjamin thanked him and closed the large wooden door. The house felt different now. No longer dark, no longer cold, but finally quiet. The remaining family walked back inside, back into the warm glow of the Christmas tree, back into the scent of cinnamon and pine, back into the home that had nearly become their tomb. Benjamin knelt in front of Emma. "You saved us," he whispered, voice trembling. "My brave girl. You saved everyone." Emma hugged him tightly, burying her face against his shoulder. "I just wanted the bad people to stop," she said softly. Benjamin kissed her forehead. "And you did." Emily joined them, wrapping both in her arms. The entire family gathered around the tree, Richard's absence heavy, Darwin's memory warm, Rose's secrets finally buried. They lit the fireplace. They sat together, and for the first time in days, they breathed. Benjamin stood and lifted Emma into his arms. "Let us go inside," he said gently. Let us finally celebrate Christmas." They entered the grand room, closing the heavy door behind them. The fire crackled, candlelight glowed, and somewhere deep in the old beams of the house, peace returned at last. Benjamin looked out over his family, his brave daughter, his strong wife, his grieving cousins, the children who deserved a joyful morning. Merry Christmas, dear listener. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.